Okay, we're ready? All right. Good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on this hot and sunny and apparently beach day on Friday, June 19th. Great to see you all. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Valerie Roshan. I'm the president for the Chamber Collaborative of Greater Portsmouth. And on our call and support and driving the bus, and our moderator is Ben Van Camp, our vice president. So thank you all for joining us today. Today we're going to welcome Portsmouth Police Chief Robert Murner, who's going to address policing policies and how our Portsmouth Police Department is working with our community. And we're also going to hear from Joanna Kelly, who owns Cup of Joe downtown. And she has been very involved in the Black Lives Matter movement and worked very closely with Chief Murner on making sure that we had a safe, peaceful, and really well-attended Black Lives Matter rally a couple of weeks ago. So we just want to talk about that collaboration, and we'll get to both of them in a few minutes. Now, today is Juneteenth. And as most of you know, Juneteenth is a holiday celebrating the liberation of those who had been held as slaves in the United States, the emancipation of the last remaining enslaved African Americans in the Confederacy. So it's a big deal. And the Black Heritage Trail folks are having a live stream event. It's not a live event, it's a live stream event. It's a celebration that starts right about now. And it's music to celebrate our ancestors, drumming, dance, and song. And so Ben, using his IT magic, is going to video some of that as it starts up. And usually at the end of these chats, we try to give you something to walk away with a smile or a good feeling or an uplifting moment. And so Ben's going to perform the magic. And at the end of our discussion today, we'll share some of that live stream celebration with you. So you'll want to stick around for that. A little bit of housekeeping while you'll all be on mute. Please use the chat function to ask questions. We're all getting pretty familiar with all those little buttons on the bottom there, so use the chat. If we get bombed, Zoom bombed, which hasn't happened yet, thank goodness, Ben will close the meeting immediately and we'll reschedule. And know that all Chamber Chat live events are recorded and will be posted to our Facebook and YouTube channels. So I'm going to give you a little bit update on the Chamber news. So we have about 70 restaurants that have received approval for outdoor dining arrangements or indoor dining, or a combination of both. Indoor dining, as we know, is limited capacity. Some restaurants have chosen to do that. Some restaurants have chosen not to do that because they just don't have the capacity to make it a good return on investment. But keep watching our websites, portsmouthcollaborative.org or goportsmouthnh.com, where we continuously update who's open and what they're doing, if they're just open for takeout and delivery still, or if they're actually opening up. Same thing for retail, so and the hotels, so just keep checking that. We know that more than 30 retailers are now open, so please check that out and go see them. They need you. They want to see you. So, and our hotels, of course, are opening up as well. A little bit of a quarantine issue with the hotels. If somebody drives in, they have to sign an affidavit saying that they are not sick and that they have, in effect, quarantined, except to go to the grocery store or whatever, for the last 14 days. And they have to sign that affidavit when they try to check in. For those people who are using public transportation, it appears to be a little bit differently. If you arrive by bus, train, or plane, you are supposed to quarantine for 14 days here before you check into the hotel, which kind of defeats the purpose. So we're trying to get some clarification on that, because that doesn't really work, does it? So you can find all of this information, the guidelines on opening at nheconomy.com/COVID-19. And of course, check out our websites, portsmouthcollaborative.org and goportsmouthnh.com. I do want to give you 2 updates. We had our annual membership meeting yesterday, our fiscal year end, and our annual membership meeting for the Chamber yesterday. And I want to congratulate Dan Innes, who is of UNH, who's now our new board chair. Monty Bohannon from the Music Hall is now our new vice chair, and John Crisp of the First Savings Bank is is going to serve as treasurer. So congratulations to our new executive team. And a quick update on the Citizens Response Task Force that has been pulled together or appointed by the City Council. There are two parallel paths that we're working on right now. One is for the arts, culture, entertainment community to get up on top of the Foundry Place garage for events for this summer, trying to work through that. And the other group working parallel is trying to get our restaurants, trying to figure out how best to get our restaurants out on the streets, working hand in glove with the city staff to determine how we can put barriers, where we can put barriers, and making sure that we're respectful of the other businesses besides the restaurants so that they can get into, so that they have full access to their storefronts as well. So that's what we're working on right now. We're looking at Market, Congress, Daniel, Pleasant, State, Bridge, Penn Hollow Streets, and Port Rock Place. I got a question earlier today asking if those are all the streets that we're planning to close down, and the answer is no. I don't know of any street, and I'm going to ask Joe to jump in there. She has or the chief to jump in there. I know of no street that's planned to be totally closed down. If and when the Jersey barriers go out on those streets, there will certainly be some traffic flow patterns that will change, but there's no streets that are closed down entirely. And I'm seeing the chief and Joe nodding. So yeah, we're not closing down. The suggestion is not to close down streets. We will ask the chief to speak first, and then Joe, and then we will open it up for Q&A, and Ben will be moderating that. And after all of that, then we'll switch over to that live stream. I can't wait to hear the drumming celebration. So we're going to start with the chief. So Robert Murner began his tenure as Portsmouth Chief of Police in June 2017, bringing 32 years of policing experience with him after serving for over 28 years in the Boston Police Department, retiring as a superintendent. He also served just over 2 years in the Seattle Police Department as an assistant chief. And I think the chief has proven his interest in innovative and new problem-solving initiatives by working with all law enforcement partners to better serve the public. And we know that you are so involved with the community, Chief, and we're so happy that you're taking the time. I know you have a lot going on, so we're so happy that you're taking the time to come visit with us today. Chief Murner.
Well, good afternoon, Valerie, and good afternoon, everyone. Just like to take a minute to thank the Chamber for inviting me to speak, as well as members of the community for their support of the police. We, as you know and have seen, we had three major events in Portsmouth 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago yesterday, we had a Thursday night event, Black Lives Matter speaking in March. Saturday, we had an event that was sponsored by the students and former students of Draper Academy, which was a march from Kittery, ending up in a speaking event at Pleasant Street. And then as Joanna will talk about, her Black Lives Matter and Justice March, conference and presentations, which took up the entire of Pleasant Street, circling around to Congress Street. We had three very well-attended events, in excess of 1,500 the first two events, and probably 3,500 to 4,000 on the third event. No problems. One of the biggest concerns of the police is to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to express their constitutional rights to free speech. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to businesses, citizens, and make sure that no person show up near Duell's that look to disrupt the event or cause problems in Portsmouth. As Valerie stated, I spent many, many years in Boston working, fortunately, not only protest, but sporting events, celebrations, Bruins parades, Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, and all of those things come with their own challenges. But the working with Joanna, working with all of the event organizers for all three events, with myself, Captain Newport, Captain Maloney, Captain Sargent, we were able to make sure those 3 events went off very well, and that we had no issues with any persons that were looking to disrupt. And I felt that the Portsmouth Police conducted themselves the way that the public would request. And we had no property damage, no spray painting, no anything. And the events went off tremendously. I will talk about a couple of things. As you know, we continue on with our community policing efforts. And there are a number of demands and changes that come up. I've been involved with police change and speaking to change since the early 1990s. And working with the Boston Police, I thought they did it better than anyone in the country. And when I look at some of the things that go on when we talk about Black Lives Matters and persons of color, in Boston in 1990, we had 152 homicides. We were arresting more people. We were seizing more firearms. We were seizing more guns. More people were being incarcerated. And we said, something's got to change. We changed our modus of operandi, which was basically referred to years later by numerous presidents, Clinton, Obama, as the Boston Miracle. And by 1995, we knocked the murder rate down to 31. It's never gone over 50 since. And that's 30 years of 100 less homicides, which is about 3,000 persons. And unfortunately, most of the persons that were victims of the homicides were persons of color, Black and brown young males. And it was done with less arrest, less enforcement, and more comprehensive community policing with things like mentoring, community outreach, engaging the business community, which I think it's so important that the chamber is on this call, and giving opportunities to those that are sometimes devoid of those opportunities within the community. I think that's a good starting point, and I'd be more than happy to touch on questions or any other subjects that need to be answered.
Thank you, Chief. Can you spend a moment talking about, you've worked in police departments on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and here you are in Portsmouth, and we're very thankful to have you here. You're paying attention to what's going on in the country and with the policing policies that people are talking about. Are there specific trends or changes that you're seeing rising to the top? You're talking about the Boston Miracle. Were there 1 or 2 changes that you made that could be applied or that you are hoping are applied in other police stations around the country as we're talking about this shift in police policy?
Sure. I think the most important thing is, and one of the words that I always think, and Joanna and I have had this discussion that gets somewhat abused in policing the community, is the word partnership. And it's really relationships. It's about building relationships, not just, we have a partnership with this group or we have a partnership with that business. It's actual a relationship. So then when people pick up the phone and say, hey, I need this, or I'm trying to help this youth, or I'm trying to help this family, or I'm having an issue with the police department, that the phone gets answered and the problem really gets aired out. So, but I've looked at a number of things that we did in Boston for years, and that are, the NAACP has put in 8 Don't Wait, which are things like ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, ban shooting at or from moving vehicles. That was something that we put in Boston in 1995. Require a use of force continuum. So, the gun should not be the option. And one of the things that I've talked about with my command staff most recently is supervision. And when I look at the tragedy and the disaster and the murder in Minneapolis, the lack of a supervisor on scene really changes things. Not that all of 3 of those other officers should have intervened, but whether we're in Portsmouth, Boston, Seattle, and you hear 4 different units going off on a call. Take me off, take me off, when a sergeant, a street sergeant or a supervisor hears 4 units off on a particular call, that means he or she better get her butt moving and get to that call, because had a sergeant showed up on that scene 2, 3, whatever minutes earlier and said, is that man in custody? Put him in a car. That would have ended it. Now, again, the duty to intervene is everyone, and we've just I've updated 3 portions of what we call our response to resistance, formerly known use of force, and we put it in specifically the duty to intervene. But I think promoting and training and picking the best supervisors, street supervisors, is a huge part of successes all across the country. And just to touch on paying attention, yesterday I was on a PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, a 2-hour Zoom call with the chiefs of NYPD, Dallas PD, Detroit PD, LAPD, Chicago, all across the country. And this is not something that is taken lightly. Many departments do many of these things, but clearly, as I've traveled around over the last 35 years, some departments are way behind in these type of things. So it's just constantly upgrading what should be done.
That's great. That's a great insight. And I do have to share that you do practice what you preach about building relationships and being, immediate response. I have to say that I texted you with it to invite you to be on this, and within a minute, you just said yes. So I talk about quick response. It was awesome.
I think that comes from my years of homicide. I used to hear that 17 years of work in homicides in Boston, when that beeper went off or the beep went off, it usually wasn't good news. So I got in the habit of answering it right away.
Well, I appreciated that. You do practice what you preach. Thank you so much. So, Ben, I don't see any questions just yet, so I will move on to Joanna. Is that fair? Yeah? Okay, thank you. So Joanna Kelly is a New Hampshire native and owner of Cup of Joe in downtown Portsmouth, specializing in certified organic wood oven roasted coffee, craft cocktail beer, small vineyard wines, and local baked goods, which she opened in 2018. She's active in local politics, sits on the boards of several nonprofits, including Big Brothers Big Sisters, where she is currently a Big Sister mentor within the program, celebrating 5 years, which is pretty awesome. She sits on the boards of the Seacoast African American Cultural Center and the Young Professionals for Mentoring. With a persistent passion for the arts and community, Joanna enjoys staying engaged with her local and state communities. And I learned today, I didn't know this, Joanna, she is also a bridal makeup artist. Very cool. Yeah. Thanks for being with us today, Jo.
Thank you. So I guess I'll just jump right in. So we planned the great event that we ended up having on the 7th in downtown Portsmouth, which, I must say that I am really lucky that, I feel like I have a really great relationship with our police department, especially the chief. And so the event started very small, just kind of a group of local citizens. And as we all know, really grew very rapidly. And there were a lot of changes within that. And when I formally took over event, the first call I did was to the chief and said, "Hey chief, I am now in charge of this event. How can we make this the safest, best event?" Because I really live under the mindset that, distractions cause, we won't be able to hear anything that we have to say. And I wanted to make sure that our community, especially our community of color, was represented in the way that we truly are, right? There was a lot of people, it was really interesting, even the day of the rally, I was coming out of Cup of Joe and someone looked at me and said, "Why do you have to do this here? Why do you have to do this here?" And I said, "Well, I live here. I'm from here. I'm part of this community. And so it's important for me and a lot of the people of color in this community to feel heard and to feel like we are welcomed, to have, vocal opinions about things. We are really lucky, especially I would say within the last, 5 to 6 years of the positive turn that our police department has taken. But a lot of people aren't that lucky. And so I felt like, especially in our community, I have a platform to stand on, and people that, sit down and have conversations with me, which a lot of people of color in other areas don't have that platform. And I felt, it would be obtuse of me not to use it. So, as the event grew, as we were getting, 2,000, 3,000 with nice weather, we were looking at, double the numbers. It was really about how do we have a safe event? And there was so many things that I had never known about. I'd never really known about street medics or peacekeepers, volunteers that are trained to de-escalate situations and be aware during these events. So I basically put a call out, a call of action and a call of need. And, a lot of local businesses responded with help. We had our sound system donated by the Press Room, Trigger House, and Seacoast Rep. Our stage was donated by Trigger House. And then it was just great to see the community support. We wanted to make sure, again, that we had a very safe and healthy event. So we supplied something like, although this is a lot of plastic, COVID, like 9,000 water bottles, and we had first aid kits set up. And I'm sure if any of you have seen the pictures that were at the event, we had water tents everywhere. We had medic tents everywhere. We had masks. We had gloves. So that part of it, was under control. I wanted to make sure we had a safe event. And the other thing I wanted to do that I think that a lot of events around here didn't do is I wanted to bring people together and give them a platform to talk. Which is why I chose a rally versus a march. And we had, between singers and performers, 21 people that ranged in age of 9 years old up to their mid-70s. And that was a really important picture for me to paint, because I do think a lot of times, we talk about that we don't have a lot of people of color in this community. And so it was really important for me to show that picture to everyone that we do. I, really talk about that I don't share all of the same opinions as everyone else. I think that's a big misconception, especially, in a majority white, community. And the chief the chief knows about this. I got a lot of slack from people. And surprisingly slack from people in, people of color and in our community that didn't think that I was, anti-police enough, didn't want to abolish the police, and then I got a lot of grief on the other side of, why do you feel like you have to hold this rally? Racism doesn't happen here. So for me, how I just lived my life and how I wanted this rally to represent me and my community was, one of real unity, and one of anyone who felt the need. We had all colors and creeds and genders speak at the event, because I feel like that, for me at least, is how we move forward of this, right? We can't have a conversation if we all can't get to the table. And I think right now, especially for people of color in the Black Lives Matter movement, is saying, like, we want to get to the table. We've been trying to get to the table. Please let us to the table. And different people do it different ways. And the peaceful rally and the unity. And I think I would say, in one of the reflections I've heard, one of the strongest moments of the rally is we took a moment of silence, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that represented, the time essentially the knee was on Mr. George Floyd's neck. But during that time, I read off a list of about 150 names. So I asked people if they wanted to stand, they could totally stand. If they wanted to kneel, if they wanted to lay down. I don't think it's any less respectful as long as you're within that moment of silence. And within that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I read about 150 names of people who have been tragically killed by police brutality since 2015. And so I think that was a really powerful statement, because I think we focus a lot on the names that we know. But there are a lot of names that we don't know, especially, in the realm of people of color. So that was a very poignant moment. But, I think overall we got a great response. And I think we did it very much, it sounds funny, the Portsmouth way, you know what I mean? A very unified way. And that was my point of it. And I have people come up to me now every day on the street and say, thank you so much. I was at the Gaslight just last night, and a young waitress came up to me and said, that was so moving. I'd never been to a rally. I'd never heard stories like that. You really changed, how I want to be involved. And, that is the most moving thing. And that's why I did it.
And you did it so well. You did it so well. I am so impressed. I thank you for pulling that together. Have you ever done that before? Have you ever pulled together?
I have not. I've done, so the board I sit on, the YP Forum, the Young Professionals for Mentor, and we do like the stiletto sprint. So I've done smaller events like that, but no, I am now doing a collaborative event in Concord, a call of action, the 27th at the State House. And it is so one thing I like to really clarify is that Black Lives Matter is an actual organization with different subchapters. So I'm not formally affiliated with any of these chapters. I'm obviously support of the movement. Black Lives Matter Manchester, Black Lives Matter Nashua, Concord for Change, and then I'm just called Portsmouth Organizer. We are working to do a rally the 27th in Concord, very similar to the format we did in Portsmouth, with speakers and some performers along the same thing. But now it's funny because now I'm called every day and saying, can you help us with this one? And it's been I spoke at Rochester the other day, and a really vulnerable statement that I've now kind of come to say is, for the first time in my 31 years, I am able to say, like, I'm a very proud Black woman. You know what I mean? It's been really funny because I never promoted Cup of Joe as a Black-owned business, because to me, it is. I'm Black and I own the business, and it's been really interesting to see the positive communications we have with all of the sharing of the Black-owned businesses in New Hampshire. And myself being only, at least brick and mortar, only one of really two in Portsmouth. So that's been a really great thing.
That's awesome. Well, I certainly believe that people are calling you to do it elsewhere, because you and the chief showed that you're a brilliant team and you could pull it off. So, you pull it off well. So I have no doubt about that. Let me just ask you a question. What was the one thing that you hoped when people walked away 2 weeks ago? What was the takeaway that you wanted them to have? You just said that some people were saying that there were some changes that they thought that they wanted to make on their own, or that they had some reflection.
So
what would you want people to, if you could say one thing that you wanted them to take away so that they made a change and a difference, what would you say that was?
So I may split that up real quick. So when I did kind of a call to action to two different parts of this movement, right? We have the part of the ally, people that are finally, somewhat opening their eyes and saying, how can I help? I want to help. I want to learn. I want to be part of this. And so a call to action I did for kind of allies was, you need to have uncomfortable conversations. We need to talk about these things. You need to really listen to people and understand that, again, different people of color have different opinions on how to deal with things, but not to shame people. I always talk about, and I think they're good pollers to kind of compare, Malcolm X and MLK were both brilliant in what they did. They just did it differently. So to say one did it better than the other, is just not something I agree with. The second thing I put out to people of color, which I scream from the rooftops every day, is that you have to vote. You have to be engaged. I was, on WRMER, and I talked about, like, if you don't like your police department, you need to figure out a way to get on police commission. If you want a bill passed through Senate, you need to try to run for Senate. And it's encouraging those people. If I would have gotten elected last year, I would have been the first African-American woman that sat on our city council. And so it's encouraging people to do that. And it's scary. You know what I mean? you know, it really is. But encouraging people, I always say, like, you know, you can't be in the conversation if you're not in the room. And then, you know, before getting in the room, you have to get in the house, and then you have to get out in your car, and it's all forward momentum. But it really is, for me, those are my big calls of action.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I have faith. You still have time, Joe, and I have faith that you will be the first African American on the city council. I have absolute faith. I watched how you, in the candidate roundtables that we had last October, I watched how you dealt with the questions and the answers. I have no doubt that you're going to get that seat.
Thank you.
You still have time. So, Ben, do we have some questions for our folks here?
We do have one question that came through for Joe from the Very Fabulous Gold, who wants to know what you think should be done next to keep the momentum going, and how can people be involved in that effort?
Yeah, I think to stay informed, right? I think that's the first, you know, and there's so much to learn. I think, like, today I just learned that New Hampshire is one of the, and I just learned this, New Hampshire is one of the few states that recognizes actually Juneteenth as a state holiday. It was signed in last year by Sununu. But again, I think it's about being, I try to say this without sounding critical or dismissive or anything. It's about, like, really putting your quote unquote money where your mouth is. If you say you want to help and you want to be part of this movement, reach out. Because at some point, and I expressed this at the rally, you know, it's not a person of color's responsibility to, like, handhold someone who wants to help. Definitely guidance, all of that stuff. But, you know, if you want to help, it's really easy to shoot an email, right? It's really easy to follow a Facebook event. It's really easy to reach out to, you know, the SAC, the Seacoast African American Cultural Center, to reach out to the Black Heritage Trail, and figure out, like, where you're best suited to help.
Very good. Question for Chief Marner, so I'll switch up the video here. Chief, Assistant Mayor Splain recently made a statement that he would like to look into body cameras for the police department. And I did a quick Google, and everything on Google is true. And I saw Seattle had body cameras and that Boston was phasing them in. And I was curious what your thoughts were on that topic.
Sure. So as you know, just about 10 months ago, we had a 9-month panel that came to 9-month-long panel. Citizens of Portsmouth, the past president of the ACLU, the police commissioners, and a number of my staff. My staff are all non-voting members, and we did a very comprehensive study of, you know, the pros and cons, and it's on the police department webpage, and but it's always something that, you know, we could entertain to you know, have another look at whether we need the body cameras now or not. And the decision that was made at the time by the citizens and the commission was not at this time. I mean, I just caution folks to think that I'm a big training person. I think that de-escalation and bias training and education is the, you know, more important than anything. Minneapolis had body cameras and has had them for some time. It didn't save Mr. Floyd's life. And, you know, New York has body cameras, and Atlanta has body cameras. So, you know, for folks that, and, you know, and I'm not opposed to body cameras at all. Like I said, I was in Seattle. I think there's two ways you get body cameras. One is that you ask for them. We have many rural communities in New Hampshire that have them. And because the officer is by themselves, and usually backup is a long time away, so if they run into a bad incident or something happens to them, at least there's a recording of it. And the other way is that you earn them. And prior to going to Seattle, Seattle was put under a federal consent decree for excessive force and bias policing by the then Obama administration. And Kathleen O'Toole and I were part of the management team that were brought there to fix things. Now, one of the sad things for me is that by the time I left, we had one of 10 categories that was needed to be brought under complete compliance, and that came about a month and a half after I left. Before Chief O'Toole left there, the department was deemed by a federal judge and the Justice Department to be in full compliance. And now that has been, there was supposed to be a 2-year monitoring period that has now been backtracked again. So, but I just say that body cameras can be a great thing. I think you get them 2 ways. One way is that you ask for them. The second way is that you earn them. They are an expensive commodity, but no price is worth a human life. But I just caution that for folks that believe body cameras is the end all be all. Again, Minneapolis had body cameras, Atlanta has body cameras, and I think training makes a huge difference. There is no question that kneeling on someone's carotid artery for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that body cameras isn't going to solve that, but proper training, proper supervision makes a big difference there. So I'm not against it. I'm sure we will entertain it again. And if the decision is made by the commission in conjunction with myself and the citizens, then we will get body cameras.
So just a quick question. I know Joe has a question too. Do you think you'll see or implement any new training for the PD in the next year or so as a result of something?
So, like I said, we just updated our RTR policy, but de-escalation is the biggest thing. And I'll give a quick answer on de-escalation. And one of the trainings that I'm really high on, and it came up in the PERF discussion yesterday, is officers can't force an issue to the point where they've created the exigency. And I know that sounds like a little police mouthful, but the bottom line is, years ago, if you had a barricaded suspect in a house, a quick plan would be devised, a door would be kicked in, more than likely shots would be fired, and something would happen. And the way things are now, you back out, you get all uninvolved citizens and residents of a place out. And, again, I can go back just to my career. If an incident happened on a major thoroughfare in Boston, within an hour or within a half hour, a senior commander would be on scene saying, hey, we got to open up this street. No, we don't need to open up this street. If it means we keep the situation going for 13, 14, 21, 22 hours to come to a peaceful resolution for the subject, for the citizens, and for the police, then that's what we do. And I just think that, rushing into things is the biggest part of training, because, officers that rush into things now create an exigency where they either have to defend themselves with some type of force and sometimes deadly force had they not rushed in. So that's the type of training, along with de-escalation and bias training, that I'm very big on. And we have it now. We will, I've been talking with Lieutenant Cummings and Lieutenant Kinsman, and we're looking at other options to really increase our de-escalation and bias training. Now, of course, right now, I'm getting 3-4 emails a day from companies that are offering that. And the most important thing is to get something that's practical, economical, as well as relevant, because, some of these companies are just in the money-making business. Hey, we offer bias training. I want, the proper people teaching and people with the experience to teach it.
Joe, did you have a question?
Well, I just want to touch on a comment that the chief said, and it's, I'm not against body cams. I think they can definitely be great, but I think the people right now, and I get a little bit, I don't know if I should say this. I feel like what Assistant Mayor Splain, fails to mention when he talks about body cams is what the chief said, is that we had a citizens task force that looked into this for months. And so, there was people within our community that, deemed those unnecessary. So I think before demanding anything, we maybe then relook at that. But to me, I think again, we are lucky within our police force. I'm a firm believer that yes, there are sometimes bad apples. Sometimes there are bad orchards. You know what I mean? Minneapolis is a bad orchard. We are really lucky that we don't have a bad orchard. And I think, especially when I think about what the city council just voted to adopt, the resolution to be a racial justice municipality. Sorry, I had to think about the correct words. I was a little bit, this is a little bit off topic, I was a little bit upset at some of the councilors' comments where they essentially refer to, well, all lives matter too. Well, maybe, we need to talk about that. But I think at the end of the day, when we bring it back to Black Lives Matter and we bring it back to kind of what we're trying to get across in Portsmouth is, and nationwide, I think it's a great analogy that I hear is, of course, all lives matter. Of course, everyone's house matters. But right now, it's very focused that, especially in urban communities, people of color, and especially our Black community, that house is on fire. And so it's about trying to figure out how we put out that fire.
Very well said. Yeah,
Chief has,
Yeah,
has a point too.
Ben, I just, to harp on the point that Joanna just made, and she's right on the money. When I was working in Boston and we had young males and females of color that were the predominant homicide victims, we started working a lot of programs, getting summer camps going, getting job opportunities going. And I received some criticism from, white police officers saying, well, why aren't we doing this in West Roxbury? And why aren't we doing this in South Boston? Why aren't we doing this in Charlestown? And my answer was, when 12-year-old girls are shot off of mailboxes because they're sitting out front trying to get some fresh air, as was the case with Darlene Tiffany Moore in 1989, then we're going to expand the program farther. But right now, we're going to take care of the fire that's burning. And I think that's the most important issue, what Joanna said. Like, yes, all lives matter. Yes, Black lives matter. Yes, blue lives matter. But right now, the what needs to be dealt with is the disparity in the police violence, if you will, in the Black community.
My mother used to say, where there are 3 kids in the family, my mother used to say, I love you all, but only one at a time gets all my attention. And as you need it, you get it. So I think that's exactly what both of you just said. So that is absolutely true. So if we don't have any other questions there, Ben? Okay. I know that Ben has performed some magic to either get us tapped into the live stream or a video that he's taken of the beginning of the ceremony. I'm not sure which one he's going to put up there, but I am so excited about that. Let me just wrap up here by thanking Joe and the chief for being here today. I know you have a lot on your plate. I know you're very busy, but boy, what a great discussion today. This is really important for our community to hear. It's important for us to understand what it is that you're doing in the police department, what you're working on, Joe, because I think you're a rock star. You're gonna make things happen. I love it. So thank you both.
She'll be the mayor soon.
She'll be the mayor. That's right. You'll be the first African-American mayor in Portsmouth.
Wow.
I'll look forward to that day. Next week, we're going to bring in a tenant, landlord, and a lender for a discussion around the crisis created by the COVID pandemic and how it has affected our business community from paying rent to paying the mortgage. And that's been a big discussion. Tenant, landlord, lender relations have gotten a little tense, I think, over the last 3 months. And so we're going to try to bring those folks in just to have a discussion about what's going on and each of their perspectives. We'll try that next week. The following week will be Friday, July 3rd. I'm expecting most of you to already be into your 4th of July holiday celebration, so we will not have a Chamber Chat Live on July 3rd. I think it would be Ben and I would be the 2 people here, so we won't do that. Oh, Ben's not even coming. He's just shaking his head. He's not even coming next week on the 3rd. On July 10th, we've invited a commercial broker and a residential broker to talk about real estate on the Seacoast. What's hot, what's not, what are the trends, how has the pandemic impacted our local real estate? So I know that that's been a hot topic as well. I will remind you once again to look at your resources. You've got the daily city managers advisory that Stephanie puts out every day. It's actually not every day. I think Stephanie, you're gonna have to remind me, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is it? So 3 times a week. PortsmouthCollaborative.org and GoPortsmouthNH.com are some really great resources for you, all those 3 resources. So I want to say thank you again to Joe and to the chief. I want to thank you all for being here. As you know, we are in this for the long haul, and I know it becomes an overused expression, but we are in this together, and I appreciate you being here together with us today. So, and now, stay with us as we watch the Juneteenth celebration, and I want to tell you that there is another event tonight as part of this. It's a live streamed concert, Songs That Feed the Soul, from 7 to 8:30 tonight with the Negro Ensemble Company of New York, BlackHeritageTrailNH.org for more information if you need it. Take it away, Ben, and everybody have a fabulous weekend. Thank you.
Those of you who are watching this on Zoom or on Facebook, Bob Thompson is going to be closing out the program with the song "Oh Freedom." Thank you for watching and thank you for joining us.
On behalf of the Akwaaba Ensemble, we said thank you all for coming, and also thank you for watching. Thank you for bringing your love to the burying ground so we can all remember our ancestors who came before us and, died for us. We thank you in the moment of the silence of the Juneteenth. So let's all, be in the silence for a moment. Okay. Thank you. Love you. See you again next time. Banga awafia, ashe, ashe. Banga awafia, ashe.
I think they're having some issues with their live stream.
Oh, wow. Is that South Church?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Ah. Oh, I wish we could hear this. Oh, that's too bad. Ben, what do we think here?
I do have 5 minutes of earlier recorded. I can play that.
Boy, this is so unfortunate. I'm sure that this performance is excellent.
Which, is heavy in our hearts, but together, sharing rhythm, songs, and dance, that bring everybody together. So we are here to share our love, with you, and thank you for joining us here today. See us wearing a mask for the performance like this, it's really heavy on us. Wearing that, please, bear with us. We apologize for not wearing the mask, and also we're gonna be doing some dancing and covering our mouths and nose, we have breathing in the front. Thank you.
That's all I was able to record earlier. You're muted, Valerie.
Sorry. That was great. Thank you so much, Ben, for videoing and sharing. And I'm sorry that I hope their live stream, they get those bugs fixed for the rest of their celebration. So everybody enjoy your weekend. Thanks for being here. Go celebrate Juneteenth. Bye-bye.